Okay, welcome to data management workshop. Welcome to DMPTuuli workshop. First, bit about tool. You have a account for Tuuli already. You can go there and start to work with it. I will go through these questions, especially these Academy of Finland's questions here in this presentation quite thoroughly, so we can discuss on those during the presentation. The tool itself is quite easy to use. With that one you can outline your DMP and you can share it with your colleagues. You can print it out as a Word document or PDF document, so it'll be helpful. But you can make this DMP data management plan also without Tuuli. In our research guide pages we have a very condensed version, Word template version for these questions, so you can use that one as well if you find Tuuli for some reason, if you find it problematic. First, bit about research data and material. In many disciplines this is very kind of straightforward thing and we don't need to discuss about definitions on data, but at least in English we are talking about research data, and here in City Center campus this data is a bit problematic for some researchers, because when I ask researchers whether they have data or not, they are usually like, oh, we don't have any data, I'm a humanist, I do art research or something like that. But in many cases these data and material are used as a synonyms. In mundane situation we can talk about data, we can talk about materials, and they mean the same thing. But and in many cases I think we should kind of add some sort of prefix to this data and talk about data in itself. It doesn't mean a thing, but we need to talk about qualitative data, quantitative data, numeric, computational, interpreted data, and so on. On the other hand, research data does not equal, for some researchers, does not equal research materials. And if we are talking about computational, quantitative, machine-readable data, when we are talking about big data and stuff like that. So there's plenty of misunderstandings with these definitions. And for those art researchers, humanists, and those who are doing qualitative research, I always try to suggest this kind of practical definition of data. Data can be considered as kind of any observation from any material. That's what they are interested in your data management plan as well. So data, it's not only numeric, computational, or digital things. But if you have any of these behind your research, then you have data as understood in data management plan. So don't be fooled by this English term data. You have data or you have materials and you have to discuss them in your data management plan. In a nutshell, to say everything that your research is based on. All the material that your research is based on. Another question that we will go through here is what part of this material is something that should be opened. And here's this quite nice quote from Sarah Jones. All information that is needed to replicate a study should be preserved, and everything that is potentially useful for others. So you may have plenty of other material and other data, which is trial and error type of things. You don't need to open that, but you might want to consider this information that it's potentially useful for somebody else. There we can go to research data and open science. And open science is a kind of a hot topic at the moment for some reason. And it's an initiative here in Finland by the Ministry of Education and Culture, Open Science and Research Initiative, which is going on until the end of this year. And I would say that this demand to open science, this open science principle can be frustrating or even scary thing. But as I read it, open science doesn't mean that we should open everything. I like this quote that Academy of Finland is following, quote from European Commission, as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So at least my reading about open science principles is that it teaches us to think more thoroughly on what grounds and how we can open our data. And on the other hand, it kind of teaches us what's sensitive data, what to keep closed, so we don't by mistake open something that should be secured. On the other hand, also super sensitive data can also, it should be closed, obviously, but its metadata, its description could be opened. To say to the world that, hey, I made this wonderful collection of this sensitive data here, I cannot give it to you, but you can contact me and we can make an agreement how you could possibly use this one. You can open the metadata, the description of your dataset, although you don't give this data openly available. Also, you can consider that opening is not like on-off situation. It's like it's open or it's closed. There's plenty of levels of openness in different archives. As you can see here, there's an example of this Finnish social sciences data archive there, and the category A says that it's openly available to everybody without registration into their system, and category D is available only if contacted the creator or the owner of the data. So there's a different levels of openness also. Data management plan. Now I go through also the Academy of Finland's questions here, and if you have your Tuuli tools open, you can read the questions from Tuuli as well at the same time and consider these. On a general level, what is data management plan? And somehow, as open science, this is a new hot topic at the moment as well. Although I don't understand why, because data management plan should be a kind of a good research practice. It's an integral part of your research process. It should have been there already. So if you have a good research practices, you already have a good data management, and now you just need to write it out. How did you manage to do it? We are here. Most of us are here because of the Academy of Finland, because of the funder requirements. Funders are now requiring us to write a DMP. But keep in mind that at the same time writing this DMP, it has some sort of a pedagogical side as well. Consider your data management plan as a living document, updatable, revisable, and that's because in the first place, when you are starting your research project, you really don't know answers to these questions. You don't need to know. It's a plan. It's an initial plan which needs to be revised at some point. You just try to convince your reviewers that you are aware of these kind of loopholes and problems you might come up with during your research process. If you update it within a year, 2 years, 3 years, you will have it already done if you are applying for the next round. We are talking about this life cycle here as well. Previously it was like you write your research plan. Nowadays you write also your data management plan before your research project starts. Then you conduct your research, you do your analysis, you collect your data, you share your results during the publications and stuff like that. Your research project ends, but that doesn't mean that your research data life cycle needs to end. If you archive that part of your data which can be opened in an archive which provides a good persistent identifier for your datasets, and it can be found, your data can be used in new research, in learning, in teaching, by you or by somebody else. And in this way you can consider your datasets in the future as you consider your publications at the moment. Your data can be cited as well. so you can gain merit with your datasets as well. Because if you are saying that you are providing all your data or material in your journal articles, I would say that that's not possible, because your data is that massive set of files, and in your journal article there's always only a representation, visualization, a table of that data. The data is something that needs to be there so you can do the analysis and interpretations and stuff like that. So some practical advice, and these are quite straight from Academy of Finland, from Aki Salo, who is a science advisor in Academy of Finland. Avoid redundancy and overlapping between research plan. There's a section in research plan where you need to consider your material and data. Yet at the same time you are asked to write a separate DMP as an appendix to the research plan. You can consider this DMP as something that complements the plan. And Aki said that this part in the research plan is related to the project execution. In the research plan you tell how do you collect your data, with what tools you collect your data, why, how do you answer your research questions by analyzing this data. It's a core in your research project. In this other section, in this DMP, in this appendix, you consider more technical details. How do you manage your data on a technical level? Where do you put it so it's secured, backed up? What sort of ethical issues are related to the data? These are two kind of different sides to the same thing. So avoid redundancy, avoid overlapping. If you say something in research plan, you can refer it to in your DMP and vice versa. In your research plan, you can refer to your DMP as well. The length for the DMP should be only 2 pages. If you use TuuliTool, it can go to 3 pages, but it's not fatal. They don't cut any pages out. They read everything. But keep in mind, it should be kind of condensed text. Clearly state out what you have to say. Don't write a novel for your DMP. In the cases that you really don't have data, although in many cases when I ask researchers, do you have data, and they say I don't have any data, and then we interview them a bit more and we find that okay, you have data, you have materials that you need to discuss in your DMP. But if you really have a situation, if you are doing a philosophical, theoretical, conceptual pondering on terminology or something like that, there's a slight chance that you don't have any data that you need to consider. Even in that case, return the DMP. Last year there was bad reviews from somebody who didn't return the DMPs or left some questions unanswered, that it was rejected. You have to return your DMP in any case. Just state it there in the DMP. Please see my research plan. I won't be collecting, reusing, or producing any kind of data. I'm doing a philosophical, conceptual study here. Just clearly state it out. Follow the Academy of Finland's guidelines and answer those questions which are applicable, and if some question is not in your interest, just justify why. Just make it clear. Some tips for you. We go through now the Academy of Finland's questions. Read all those questions first. It's much easier to outline this DMP if you know what they are going to ask in question number 3 or number 4. Because if you don't read them first, you start to answer the first question and write everything there. In TuuliTool, there is questions, Academy of Finland's questions. Go there, you can read them from there. But if you have already used last September's call, please go there and use the current template, because there's a minor changes, and there will be minor changes in the future, I think. So Always use the guidance and questions for the current call. I've noticed that there's two sides of DMP writing in a way. And this comes from talking with researchers who are writing the DMPs, and we read through many of these DMPs, and this comes quite clearly through. Funder requirements. You are writing for your funder to try to convince your reviewers to give you money. That's one level. You are willing to write there anything from that point of view. There's another point of view, your own data management workflow in a way. And in both cases here, try to write something that you yourself understand what you are writing about, because it's much more clear then. So, very important advice here is no copy-pasting of example answers. You will find DMPs now from the internet. We have published our University of Helsinki DMPs that got funded. You can read them to have a rough idea what sort of thing this DMP is. But don't copy-paste those, because you have to reflect your own project here. Those that we read through, those that got funded, they were clearly written. We could understand, although we didn't understand the context of the study or the details of the research project, we could read the text. We could understand how they managed their data. They were consistent within themselves. The DMP was consistent within itself. If the researcher stated something in a question 1, they stated the same type of thing in question 5. There was no contradicting things. DMP was consistent also with the whole research plan. If they stated something in the research plan, they continued to say the same thing in the DMP as well. So no contradictions between these. And a couple of examples are here. We promote open access. It was kind of, because it's hot topic now to open everything, and we want to promote open access. It was a good thing. But then they said that we aim to publish, and then there was a name of the journal which is behind paywall. And no explanation was made how to open these articles. So it's not promoting open access if you publish in a paywall and don't parallel publish your articles. On the other hand, we archive data in archive-X, and in different places they stated that our data is shared in publication and conference papers. What does it mean? Your data is not shared in publication and conference papers. They are marketed there, but your data is shared in the archive-X that you stated. So please try to go through these contradicting things. Background information very shortly. Name of the plan is exactly the name of your research project. Application number you can get from the Academy of Finland's online registration system. You are the principal investigator, I think. Research topic, there was a title called Description of Research. And then people added their abstract there, and it took 1 page. It's too long. It can be very short, couple of sentences or at least couple of keywords there. For some reason, Academy of Finland wants date here. It's very important to have a DMP dated, so put the date there. Question section number 1. General description of data. What kinds of data are collected or reused? You can use this first question to outline your whole DMP. Categorize your data sets, your data here. And there's one example over there. Category A, data collected by me. I will be collecting these data from various locations. I go to different archives and so on. Data reused in this project. I found this data from Finnish Social Science Data Archive. It was already there, created by somebody else. I'm now reusing it. It's a different thing than the one that you collect. A third category could be data produced in your project. I have collected these data, these materials from different archives. In this project, I will be annotating, I'm doing qualitative research, I will be annotating, coding, commenting these original documents. That will be data I'm producing during this project. Figure out some sort of a categorization for your datasets. Then it's much easier to go through the rest of the questions with these categories. In this first question is if you want to have it very condensed format, you can use a table where there's all these dataset, surveys, interviews, archive material, other things, and then have these columns for file formats, file sizes, and stuff like that if you need. Table is very good here. Section 2, documentation and quality. There you need to describe your data. Metadata is always a tricky term. They are referring, in this question, they are referring to metadata. Metadata means data about your data. It's description of your data set. And it means that by describing your data, you will kind of tell how your data can be found, how it can be accessed, opened, in what file formats this data is in, who made it, what's the name of the data. It can be linked or integrated with other data. If you have good metadata standard and you have another data set, you can kind of put them together and they will be easily used together. You can describe also how it can be reused. The quality issue here means that how do you ensure no data will be lost if converted into another format? There's plenty of situations when you need to convert your data to different format. I've interviewed a bunch of people. I taped the interviews. Now I'm transcribing them into Word format. How do I ensure that my transcriptions are exactly the same as in the sound recording? So it's kind of how do you ensure your data maintains the original information of your source? Just write it out something. If you have this sort of issues in your quality issues in your research. Storage and backup, we already heard very thorough presentation by Petteri on this number 3, storage and backup. But I added these two into the same slide. There's section number 3 and section number 5 in the same slide. And that's because they are related or usually mixed up together. Section number 3, storage and backup, considers issues in your data management during your research project. We don't say anything about opening here. We are trying to convince our reviewers that you are aware of how to keep your data secured and backed up. How do you access control to it? If you want to collaborate internationally, how do you provide secured access to your data which is in your server? These sort of issues are considered here in section 3. On the other hand, section 5 considers data and materials after your research project. Where do you put your data when your project ends and you want to open your data? So from this material that you are considering here in number 3, you will kind of reconsider that part of your material that can be archived for long-term preservation. And from that set, you can consider that which can be opened for reuse for other people. So, roughly speaking, number 3, you consider everything, all the material and data, all those trial and error versions as well. In number 5, you consider only those which are valuable for somebody else later in the future, which needs to be archived. In 5, consider those kind of archives which provide persistent identifiers, such as DOI, Digital Object Identifier, It's much easier to find your data if you have a persistent identifier for the dataset. It's much easier to cite your data if they have these bits. Favor archives with a certificate for long-term preservation, such as the DSA certification, data seal of approval. And in Finland we have only 2 DSA certified archives, which are the Language Bank of Finland and Finnish Social Science Data Archive in Tampere. Academy of Finland is also mentioning such places as IDA, Zenodo, Fixer and so on, so they don't, the DSA certificate, it's not mandatory for Academy of Finland. Section number 4, ethics and legal compliance. Such things as who owns your data, how informing research participants is handled, is your data sensitive, how sensitive data is handled, if you do any anonymizations or stuff like that. So that's in number 4. Now we can start to work on those. In Tuuli tool, there's a help and support for you as well. These are added into the slides that I already sent it you. I will upload these new slides to the same wiki page that we had these earlier slides. University of Helsinki is following this research data policy. You can read that through, but much more important on a concrete level is this research data support network, which you can reach through research data at helsinki.fi. If you don't remember anything else from this talk, you try to remember that one. From there you can have help. As mentioned, we have this research guide. Very good place to go, plenty of material for you to go through while writing your DMP. Also, already mentioned Finnish Social Science Data Archive has this very, very thorough data management guidelines. It's very good. Couple of numbers you will need when you are doing your application. First is ORCID researcher identifier. It's not mandatory but highly recommended. Go to orchid.org if you don't have it yet. Identify yourself, register a number for yourself. If you change your name in the future at some point, your ORCID number stays. It will be a lot easier to cite you. If you change your organization, your ORCID number stays. It's not organization related. It's a very good place. And nowadays, TUHAT, our local repository for research publications, is linked with ORCID, so you will have your ORCID updated when you update your TUHAT. If you are applying from Academy of Finland, you will need this application number, and you can get it from Academy of Finland's online registration service. I have also a further reading for you in the slides, links to Zenodo archive, where we publish our DMPs, University of Helsinki DMPs that got funded last year. You can find some examples from there. FAIR principle, 5-star data, guidance for choosing cloud services, and straight from Academy of Finland's Jyrki Hakapää is trying to convince you why open science is important thing. Thanks for this. We need your help. Give us feedback on these DMP workshops or on other issues. And now we have at least some 30 minutes to go through your questions. We can go take a closer look at Tuuli if you wish, but I would say that Tuuli is quite easy tool to use. But if you have any questions on Tuuli, we can have it open here as well.